Black Myth Wukong is roaring into your life soon, at least if you're anything like me. And I not only like being an informed purchaser, but I also just like the hype, if I'm completely honest. When a good-looking game seems like it might be deserving of the hype, I'm all about it. And I think this might be one of those games. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 things you need to know about Black Myth Wukong. So starting off at number 10, let's answer the easy questions. Black Myth Wukong is an action RPG based on Journey to the West, which is Chinese folklore, specifically a very old novel written many decades ago. You play as Wukong, the Monkey King. You explore lush environments and you battle titanic bosses. It's been developed by a Chinese studio called gameranx, which is not actually the worst name, and you might be able to expect that at least in its home country, there's a massive amount of hype and expectations riding on this game given that historical relevance. Now, Chinese history is actually pretty well regarded and known by a lot of the Chinese people, as is Chinese folklore, so you can imagine their familiarity and therefore expectation. Now, in terms of what the game is beyond that, you run around Chinese mythology-inspired environments, you collect souls, called will in this game, you rest at shrines, you drink from a gourd that functions exactly like an Estus flask, you lose a portion of your experience when you die. It's all the usual trappings of the Souls-like genre, but that doesn't really reflect the whole game. There is actually a lot that makes it different. That's what we're talking about today specifically. Many have called this a Souls-like in previous, including myself, and while I do think that is appropriate based on a lot of the basics of the game, it's also, I think, probably not going to be an entirely accurate description when you're talking about the entire conversation. Now, interestingly enough, aside from all of that stuff we talked about that are kind of the basics of the Souls-like, it might actually have a little more in common with the recent God of War games of all things, but also that doesn't explain what this game exactly is, because again, all that Souls-like stuff's right there. So to put it simply, based on the fact that all of the elements I keep picking out are games that I like, I'm pretty excited to find out exactly what it is. Now, none of that is a guarantee of quality. I mean, that Day Before game was also one of the most wish-listed games on Steam, but from everything I've seen and all the previews I've read, all the information I've taken in, all the videos I've watched, Black Myth Wukong has the potential to be something special. So with all that said, let's talk about the combat. Moving on to number 9, there are no dedicated parry or block buttons. For me, this is a big one. Every Souls-like in recent memory has been laser focused on parry mechanics. Sekiro started the trend, and to be fair, does it very well. So did the Jedi games, Stellar Blade, the Team Ninja games, Nine Souls. They're all about parries, and this isn't really something I'm complaining about per se, but seeing a game like this come along without a dedicated parry button or even a block button really stands out. In Black Myth, your combat tools are a little more focused. You only have one kind of weapon, the Monkey King's magic staff, a regular combo button that can be held down to perform heavy attacks, a focus ability that I'll get into more detail later, magic spells that rely on a mana meter, a jump and a dodge button. I mean, outside of parry and block, the standards. In this game, based on what I've seen, is all about that dodge button. It's your primary way of avoiding damage, and from all the previews I've seen, it's fairly forgiving, although I'm speculating a little bit here based on footage. There does seem to be a pretty large invulnerability window. There's a stamina meter that you'll have to keep an eye on that's right out of a Souls game, but the rest of the combat feels more like a straight-up action game. It's faster. I've mentioned that a few times. I've also mentioned Bayonetta when I'm saying it's not necessarily Bayonetta fast, because it's not. That being said, the dodge mechanics do look a little Bayonetta-ish. Looks like it plays by the Bayonetta rules. We can dodge up to 3 times in a row. The third dodge has a longer recovery window, though. In general, combat in Black Myth looks really fast and brutal. Like I said, not necessarily platinum fast, but pretty fast, given that it does crib a lot in terms of the basic gameplay elements from a Souls-like. I mean, some of this stuff, in comparison, looks absolutely lightning fast. And I really like the focus on movement rather than the usual parry gameplay of just planting yourself in the middle of an arena and staying there. It's definitely refreshing. And I want to say, I do enjoy parry mechanics, but not every single one of these games needs to be Sekiro. I like a little variety. And also, it doesn't look like it's going to be Sekiro in all honesty. There's a lot of defensive abilities that seem to work like a parry, maybe a spell or a transformation, but they really don't seem to be central to the experience. And actually, that's kind of an element element of why I'm interested in this. It's not like I think, oh, get rid of the parry. It's, oh, nice, something different. Let's see what they do with this. There is a lot more about the combat mechanics I want to get into, but let's just stop for now and appreciate how good this game looks. Moving on to number 8, the visuals are friggin' amazing. You can't talk about this game without mentioning the visuals. I think I have mentioned them literally every single time I brought this game up because it looks insane. There's legitimate next-gen stuff here. Even from the recent Gamescom demo alone, they've showed off some stuff in the starting area on Blackwind Mountain. Everything just seems to be carefully rendered with a ton of meticulous attention to detail. The world looks shockingly realistic, but the bosses, they're actually the real highlight. Their opening cutscenes look absolutely stunning, and the way they move around and animate is really impressive. Combat looks really smooth and seamless. There's not really any hint of jankiness or awkwardness in the way the combat works, and sometimes you do get that even in a good one. It looks great. It seems to run really well, too. All of the people who have managed to play the 2-hour demo came out saying the same thing, that the game runs buttery smooth for an Unreal 5 game. Obviously, this is coming from a carefully curated demo using developer PCs, but still, good sign for the game's performance. If there's one thing that's a little concerning related to the graphics, it's that we have gotten no footage whatsoever of the console versions. The trailers are all made with PC gameplay, which calls into question what the game will look like on consoles. Hopefully not too bad, because the PS5 has better specs than the recommended requirements for the PC version, but until we actually get our hands on the game or a trailer that includes footage from the console versions, we don't know how it's going to run on consoles. Which on one hand is great for people who play the games on PC like myself. I'm certainly going to play it there. And I've run my mouth quite a bit about bad PC ports and how the PC has been kind of left to languish on a lot of high-profile titles. This doesn't look that way because the PC seems to really run that demo lightning quick and really smooth, which bodes well for the final release. Moving on to number 7, there's Ghost of Tsushima-like stances. One of the key elements of combat in this game is focus, which may or may not be the final name in the retail version. Apparently the devs are still workshopping it. How it works is you build it up by attacking enemies, so when you get a charge, you can use it to perform highly damaging special attacks. These vary depending on your stances, which there are 3 of, and they can be swapped around by pressing the D-pad, which is exactly how it worked in Tsushima. The stances we know about are the smash stance, which allows you to perform a quick smash attack in the middle of a combo, which is really powerful and can often be used to interrupt enemy attacks, and the pillar stance, which is one that sounds really interesting. In the pillar stance, Wukong will stand on top of his staff and extend it to rise above the arena. It uses stamina to stay up there, but while you're up high, you pretty much avoid any attacks the boss throws at you, and you can automatically change focus. This is one of those abilities in the trailers that almost looks too good to be true. Like there's no way something this powerful and cool would be in the final game, or you'd only be able to do it at specific scripted moments. But no, it seems like a power you can use at any point, and the demo impressions are very positive about it. Seems to work as advertised. From the pillar stance, there's also a powerful downward attack that can be performed when the focus is full. So the general gameplay loop of Black Myth seems to be relatively weak light attacks to build up focus so you can hit bosses with high power special abilities. We don't know what that third stance is, but that's okay. It's far from the only abilities you have in combat. And number 6, there are spells and transformations, which is exciting. They're spells, they work pretty much exactly how to expect. They're magic abilities that cost mana, and they have a cooldown. The starting spell you get is Immobilize, which slows down enemies and makes them easy pickings. What's cool about this spell is that it works on bosses too, but only occasionally. Some bosses are more resistant to it, while other bosses from the demo are apparently just fine, like they ignore it. So it'll depend on the boss whether these abilities are effective or not. Your mana is limited, so you can only cast a few spells at a time, but from the earlier demos, it seems like there's a lot of crazy stuff you can unlock, eventually anyways, like the ability to split into multiple clones, for example, which is one of the Monkey King's most famous abilities in the original story. There are also transformations, which you unlock from bosses and optional encounters, which literally let you transform into your enemy for a short period of time. These powers are when you really need to cut loose because they do let you play as the boss for a minute or two. This completely changes up your attacks, obviously, and it even lets you perform some of the boss's super moves, which sounds awesome. Taking damage while in this form does also take seconds off the clock, so you can't just go completely nuts. You gotta play smart if you really want to maximize the effectiveness of these transformations. They aren't just this game's version of the Devil Trigger either. Some of them completely change your abilities, like there's one where you can turn it into stone for more defensive-oriented players. There's also the ability to turn into a bug and fly past enemies. It exists in one of the trailers, I think an earlier one. So not all these transformations are combat-oriented. Some are just for fun or maybe to sneak around. These transformations do have long cooldowns, so they're not something you can use all the time, but as rewards for beating bosses, they sound awesome. At number 5, the difficulty is apparently a little more on the forgiving side than your typical quote-unquote Souls-like. Black Myth is going to be a challenging game, but from everything I've heard, the developers want to make it at least accessible and a less brutally difficult game. I've seen reports say that the difficulty is more like Jedi Fallen Order than Elden Ring, but that may be based on a 2-hour demo, which was set during the opening hours of the game. Could be different. Final result could be tougher. And in contrast, I've seen a lot of people talk about the demo by saying it's very challenging, but that usually comes from players less experienced in the genre. Still, I've read multiple interviews where developers have come out and said they wanted to make the game something more players could enjoy, so I'm inclined to believe that the game will overall be easier than some of the toughest Souls games out there. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, though. Like, look at some of these bosses. These are highly aggressive, and at least at first, you don't really have a lot of charges in your healing cord, so a few mistakes can earn an early death. At least the load times are fast, and the bosses sound like they're usually close to the checkpoint, so repeating a fight isn't quite as frustrating as it could be. The game also knows when you die because bosses will often comment on it when Wukong returns. So it doesn't look like the hardest game out there, but it's probably not going to be easy either. At number 4, there is loot and crafting. One thing a lot of previews have failed to mention is that there are some systems in the game outside of combat. While exploring the world, there are resources to collect and items to craft. There's boss items that can be used to craft weapons, and there are NPCs that do things that make your gourd's healing more effective or add additional effects to your healing, like also making it so that restores mana. Great, love that. There are also new weapons to find, which sound like they're variations on the staff, but there's also armor sets which give the Monkey King additional buffs and status effects, and the effects are made more powerful by wearing a complete set. Further, there are vendors and side quests, so it seems like there's quite a bit to do in the game outside of just fight, which is great because I do like my progression systems. At number 3, this is not an open world. I want to make that very clear. The previews give maybe an impression that Black Myth could be set in a massive Elden Ring style open world, but straight from the mouths of the developers, that is not the case. According to them, the game is split into linear, level-like chapters. Rather than having a big interconnected world, the game is a story-based, straightforward experience, and if I'm completely honest with you, I like that. Like I said, love Elden Ring. I love all these games with parries. I love all this stuff. It's not that I'm against any of it, but sometimes it's just nice to have a little bit of a change of pace. I think this is in that sort of there's no parry category of things to say about this game. I like a level-based linear game from time to time. In fact, a lot of my favorite games are exactly that, old and new. The mission shown in the demo basically funnels you on a single path with a few small branches here and there for little bonuses like loot, and sometimes something more substantial like an optional boss. That doesn't mean it's just one big corridor like Final Fantasy XIII or something. From the previews, the world looks fairly lush and you can explore it in a way that feels natural, but all these mountains and vistas you can see in the distance are just there for show. You can't go there. Todd Howard would have nothing to say about those vistas. There are apparently a lot of invisible walls, too, which makes it sound a lot more like an action game with some RPG elements than a full-on Souls-like, but that's okay. Again, this looks like a change of pace in a lot of ways. Like, it obviously plays into a lot of current conventions, but it's giving it to us in a different way, and I'm there for it. Moving on to number 2, the game length. This is a big open question. Back in 2020, in an interview with the game's producers, they said the game would take at least 15 hours of playtime, which sounds pretty short, but we really don't know what that means. Is it a Miyazaki-level troll where the devs intentionally undersell how long the game is? Maybe they were sincere, but that was 4 years ago. Things could have changed in scope since then. It could be shorter, could be significantly longer. We don't know. Leaks have pointed to a lot of content, so it's hard to say. Like, the devs say the final game will have around 100 unique monsters. Some leakers made the bold claims that the game has over 160 enemy types and around 80 bosses, which sounds completely nuts for a 15-hour game. But then again, there were 7 bosses in the 2-hour Gamescom demo, so There's a reason why some people are saying the game feels a little like a boss rush, because there are a lot of fights in a very short period of time. But the developers have pushed back against that label, so maybe the game opens up a little bit more as it goes and maybe have fewer, more spaced out battles and larger levels. It seems like an odd choice to jam 7 bosses in a row in the start of a game, but it's a demo, and maybe some of this stuff is meant to come from later in the game. I don't know. But based on all this, it's kind of unclear exactly how long this game's going to be. One thing is for sure, though, there's going to be a whole lot of content here. I mean, look at the trailers. There's so many bosses and crazy enemy types. Even if it's on the shorter side, there's going to be plenty to keep you busy. It may trend towards the replay value, which I'm good with. Fine, I'm there. There's also apparently some choices to make with real consequences and 3 different endings. This all comes from leaks, so can't tell you how accurate that is. But if it's true, there's probably some pretty good replay value. And finally, at number 1, everything else, the important stuff you need to know to play the game. The highly anticipated Black Myth Wukong is finally coming out August 20th for PlayStation 5, Steam, and the Epic Game Store. Yep, no Xbox. You might think that's some kind of exclusive, but apparently not. The devs just didn't want to take the time to port the game over to Microsoft console. But at least it'll show up on PC, which does have some pretty beefy requirements. The game needs at least 130 gigabytes of storage and requires an SSD on PC, so you better clear out some space if you're going that route. And one more thing for console players, if you're into physical games, you need to wait for this one. The day 1 box copies are just going to be a code in a box. There's no actual disc. So if you're getting the game day 1, go digital. There are apparently plans for an actual disc-based physical edition that'll come out a few months later, but on release, it's just an empty box. So that's what you really need to know about Black Myth Wukong right now. It's a game made by a shockingly small studio for how impressive the game looks. There's only about 100 devs on staff compared to something recent like Stellar Blade, which was made by a team of over 300. So that only makes what they've accomplished even more impressive. There are a few minor causes for concern: the game length and the level design, but the bosses, visuals, combat, it all looks fantastic. My fingers are crossed this one turns out to be something special because, frankly, the potential is off the charts on this one. I'm really excited for it. How about you? Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.